Welcome back to Science Sleep Stories. Tonight we're going to explore something you do every single night, something so fundamental to your existence that you'll spend roughly 1/3 of your entire life doing it. We're diving deep into the fascinating science of sleep and dreams. Before we begin, if you enjoy these deep dives into science while drifting off, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more content like this to help you wind down at the end of your day, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing the global community that gathers here each evening. Now get comfortable, adjust your pillow, pull up your blanket, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or some gentle white noise if that helps you. Let your body sink into your mattress, feeling the weight of the day slowly lifting away. Tonight, we're going to understand what happens when you close your eyes and drift away, what your brain is doing while you sleep, and why this nightly journey into unconsciousness might be one of the most important things you do for your health, your memory, and your very survival. Sleep. Such a simple word for such an extraordinarily complex biological process. For most of human history, sleep was a mystery wrapped in darkness. Ancient peoples saw it as a kind of death, a daily rehearsal for our final rest. The Greeks believed sleep was the brother of death, personified as the god Hypnos. Medieval scholars thought the brain needed to cool down at night, like an overheated engine. Even well into the 20th century, scientists believed sleep was simply the absence of wakefulness, a passive state where the brain essentially shut off for maintenance. They were spectacularly wrong. Sleep is not passive. Your brain during sleep is almost as active as your brain during wakefulness, sometimes even more so. While you lie there motionless, your neurons are firing in complex patterns, your brain waves are cycling through distinct rhythms, your memories are being sorted and stored, your cells are being repaired, your immune system is being fortified, and your emotional experiences are being processed and integrated. Sleep is not an absence. Sleep is a presence, a vital, active, intricate biological state that we are only beginning to truly understand. Think about this for a moment. You are a biological organism that evolved over millions of years to spend 8 hours every day completely vulnerable, unconscious, unaware of your surroundings. From an evolutionary perspective, this seems incredibly dangerous. A sleeping animal cannot hunt, cannot gather food, cannot watch for predators, cannot reproduce. Sleep leaves you exposed, defenseless. The fact that sleep has persisted throughout evolution, across nearly every species from fruit flies to elephants, tells us something profound. Sleep must be so fundamentally important, so utterly essential, that evolution deemed it worth the risk. And indeed, the consequences of not sleeping are severe. Stay awake for 24 hours and you'll experience impaired judgment, slowed reaction times, and difficulty concentrating. Go 48 hours without sleep, and you'll start to experience microsleeps, brief moments where your brain essentially forces you into sleep whether you want to or not, because it desperately needs rest. Push beyond that, and you'll begin to hallucinate. Your cognition will deteriorate dramatically, and your risk of accident or injury skyrockets. In extreme cases, prolonged total sleep deprivation can be fatal. But tonight isn't about what happens when you don't sleep. Tonight is about what happens when you do. We're going to journey through the stages of sleep, understand the remarkable architecture of a night's rest, explore the hidden world of dreams, and discover why your sleeping brain might be doing some of its most important work while you're completely unaware. So take a deep breath, let it out slowly, feel your body relaxing, your mind beginning to quiet. We're about to explore the fascinating science of sleep and dreams, and who knows, by the time we're done, you might just drift off into the very phenomenon we're discussing. Let's begin. When you close your eyes tonight and begin to drift off, you might think you're simply falling into darkness, a single uniform state of unconsciousness that lasts until morning. But that's not what happens at all. Sleep is not one thing. Sleep is a carefully orchestrated symphony of different states, each with its own distinct brainwave patterns, each serving specific functions, each as different from the others as they are from wakefulness itself. Scientists discovered this remarkable truth in the 1950s when they began using a technology called electroencephalography, or EEG, to measure brain activity during sleep. They placed electrodes on people's scalps and recorded the electrical signals generated by billions of neurons firing in patterns. What they found astonished them. The sleeping brain wasn't quiet. The sleeping brain wasn't inactive. The sleeping brain was cycling through dramatically different states throughout the night, each marked by characteristic brainwave patterns. They identified two main categories of sleep: non-rapid eye movement sleep, abbreviated as NREM, and rapid eye movement sleep, known as REM. Within NREM sleep, they discovered three distinct stages, each progressively deeper than the last. Together, these stages create a sleep cycle that repeats 4 to 6 times throughout a typical night, each cycle lasting roughly 90 to 110 minutes. Let's walk through what happens during a typical night's sleep, stage by stage, cycle by cycle. Close your eyes and imagine you're lying in bed right now, comfortable and warm, your breathing slowing, your muscles relaxing. This is where your nightly journey begins. The first stage of sleep, called N1 or Stage 1 NREM sleep, is the lightest stage, the threshold between wakefulness and true sleep. It typically lasts only 5 to 10 minutes. Your eyes begin to move slowly behind your closed eyelids. Your muscle activity slows down, and you might experience those strange sudden muscle jerks called hypnic jerks, the sensation of falling that jolts you partially awake. During this stage, your brain waves are transitioning. When you're awake and alert, your brain produces beta waves, fast frequencies between 13 and 30 Hz, the rapid-fire electrical activity of conscious thought. As you relax with your eyes closed, these shift to alpha waves, slower frequencies between 8 and 13 Hz. Now, as you enter stage 1 sleep, these alpha waves give way to even slower theta waves, oscillating at 4 to 8 Hz. This is a fragile state. Any noise, any disturbance, and you'll snap back to wakefulness easily. In fact, if someone woke you during stage 1, you might not even realize you had been asleep. You might insist you were just resting your eyes, just thinking quietly, but your brain knows differently. Stage 1 sleep accounts for about 5% of your total sleep time, serving as the gateway, the transition point into deeper realms of rest. You're drifting now, thoughts becoming dreamlike, consciousness beginning to slip away. Your body temperature starts to drop slightly. Your heart rate begins to slow, and then, almost imperceptibly, you cross another threshold. Stage 2. NREM sleep is where you truly fall asleep. This is the stage where, if someone tried to wake you, you would clearly recognize that you'd been sleeping. Your eye movements stop entirely. Your brain waves continue to slow, those theta waves becoming more prominent. But here's where something fascinating happens. Periodically, your brain produces two distinctive wave patterns that appear nowhere else in sleep. The first pattern is called sleep spindles. These are sudden bursts of rapid brainwave activity, lasting just a second or two, appearing like little explosions of neural firing on an EEG recording. Scientists believe these sleep spindles play a crucial role in memory consolidation, helping to transfer information from short-term storage in your hippocampus to long-term storage in your cortex. The more sleep spindles you generate during the night, research suggests, the better you'll perform on memory tasks the next day. The second pattern is called K-complexes. These are sudden, high-amplitude waves, sharp spikes of electrical activity that appear in response to external stimuli. If a door slams or a dog barks while you're in stage 2 sleep, your brain might generate a K-complex without fully waking you. Scientists think these K-complexes serve as a kind of sentinel function, monitoring your environment for potential threats while allowing you to remain asleep. Stage 2. Sleep is substantial. You spend nearly half your total sleep time here, about 45 to 55% of the night, your body temperature continues to drop. Your heart rate and breathing slow further. Your muscles relax more completely. You're settling deeper into sleep now, preparing for the most restorative stage of all. Stage 3. NREM sleep, also called deep sleep or slow wave sleep, is the most physically restorative stage of sleep. This is where your body does its deepest healing, its most intensive repair work. During deep sleep, your brain produces delta waves, the slowest brain waves of all, oscillating at just 0.5 to 4 Hz. These are high-amplitude, synchronized waves representing millions of neurons firing together in slow, rhythmic patterns. Deep sleep is profound. If someone tried to wake you during this stage, they would find it difficult. You would be deeply unconscious, unresponsive to moderate stimuli. If you did wake, you would experience what scientists call sleep inertia, that groggy, disoriented feeling that can last for 30 minutes or more, as if your brain needs time to reboot and reconnect with reality. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, essential for tissue repair and muscle development. Your immune system strengthens, producing cytokines that help fight infection and inflammation. Your blood pressure drops to its lowest point of the day. Blood flow increases to your muscles, delivering oxygen and nutrients for recovery. Your brain's glymphatic system becomes highly active, flushing out metabolic waste products that accumulated during waking hours, including beta-amyloid proteins that, if allowed to build up, are associated with Alzheimer's disease. Children and teenagers get the most deep sleep, with stage 3 accounting for up to 20% of their total sleep time. As you age, deep sleep decreases. By the time you're elderly, you might get very little stage 3 sleep at all, which may partly explain why older adults often report feeling less refreshed after a night's sleep. The first deep sleep period of the night typically lasts 20 to 40 minutes, occurring mostly in the first third of your sleep period. As the night progresses, you'll spend less and less time in deep sleep and more time in other stages. Your body front-loads this restorative stage, prioritizing physical recovery early in the night. And then, about 90 minutes after you first fell asleep, something remarkable happens. Your brain begins to wake up. Rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep, is perhaps the most fascinating sleep stage of all. This is where the most vivid, elaborate, emotional dreams occur. This is where your brain becomes almost as active as it is when you're awake, even while your body lies paralyzed. During REM sleep, your brain waves shift dramatically. Those slow delta waves disappear, replaced by fast mixed-frequency activity that closely resembles the brain waves of wakefulness. Beta waves appear. Theta waves appear. Your brain is firing rapidly, processing information, generating experiences, but you're not awake. You're dreaming. Your eyes, which have been still during NREM sleep, suddenly begin moving rapidly back and forth beneath your closed eyelids. This is what gives REM sleep its name. These rapid eye movements may correspond to what you're seeing in your dreams, your eyes tracking visual imagery in your sleeping mind the same way they would track real visual information when you're awake. Here's the strange part. While your brain is highly active during REM sleep, your body is completely paralyzed. Your skeletal muscles lose all tone, becoming temporarily immobilized through a process called atonia. This paralysis is generated by your brainstem, which actively inhibits motor neurons during REM sleep. The reason for this paralysis is straightforward. Without it, you would physically act out your dreams, potentially injuring yourself or others. People who lose this REM paralysis due to a condition called REM sleep behavior disorder do exactly that, punching, kicking, even getting out of bed while dreaming, often with dangerous consequences. During REM sleep, your breathing becomes irregular and rapid. Your heart rate increases and becomes variable. Your blood pressure rises. Your brain's temperature regulation shuts down temporarily, making you unable to shiver or sweat in response to temperature changes. In many ways, REM sleep is physiologically closer to wakefulness than to other sleep stages, which is why some scientists call it paradoxical sleep, the paradox being that your brain is awake while your body is asleep. The first REM period of the night is short, typically just 10 minutes. But as the night progresses, as you cycle through multiple sleep cycles, your REM periods get longer and longer. By the final cycle of the night, you might spend up to an hour in REM sleep. Over a full night, REM sleep accounts for about 20 to 25% of your total sleep time. REM sleep is essential for emotional processing and regulation. Studies show that people deprived of REM sleep have difficulty managing emotions, become more reactive to stress, and show increased activity in the amygdala, the brain's emotional center. REM sleep is also crucial for certain types of memory consolidation, particularly procedural memories and emotional memories. And of course, REM sleep is where we experience our most memorable, narrative-rich dreams, those vivid nighttime stories that can seem so real while we're experiencing them. Now, let's put it all together. A typical night's sleep doesn't progress linearly through these stages. Instead, you cycle through them repeatedly. You enter stage 1, descend into stage 2, sink into stage 3 deep sleep, come back up to stage 2, and then enter your first REM period. That's one complete cycle, lasting about 90 to 110 minutes. Then the cycle begins again. Stage 2, perhaps a brief dip into stage 3, back to stage 2, then another REM period, this one longer than the first. Cycle after cycle, throughout the night, your brain orchestrates this intricate dance of sleep stages. The architecture is specific, purposeful, refined by millions of years of evolution. The first third of the night is dominated by deep NREM sleep. This is when your body does its heaviest restoration work, when growth hormone is released, when tissues are repaired. The last third of the night is dominated by REM sleep. This is when your brain does its intensive memory processing, when emotional experiences are integrated, when you dream the most. The average adult needs about 7 to 9 hours of sleep to complete 4 to 6 full cycles. If you cut your sleep short, you don't just get less sleep, you lose entire cycles, often missing out on those long late-night REM periods that are so important for psychological health. Sleep is not just time spent unconscious. Sleep is a carefully choreographed biological process, each stage serving specific functions, each cycle building on the last. Your brain knows what it's doing, your body knows what it needs. When you give yourself adequate time to sleep, you allow this remarkable architecture to unfold naturally, completely, beneficially. And underlying this nightly cycle, keeping everything synchronized and properly timed, is your brain's master clock. Deep within your brain, in a region called the hypothalamus, sits a cluster of about 20,000 neurons no larger than a grain of rice. This tiny structure, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, is your brain's master clock. It generates a biological rhythm that coordinates nearly every aspect of your physiology, from when you feel sleepy to when you feel alert, from when your body temperature peaks to when it drops, from when hormones are released to when they're suppressed. This rhythm has a period of approximately 24 hours, which is why we call it circadian, from the Latin word circa, meaning around, and dies, meaning day. Your circadian rhythm is not learned. You're born with it. It's genetically programmed into your cells through an intricate molecular mechanism involving clock genes and proteins that oscillate with remarkable precision. These genes are expressed in nearly every cell in your body, creating peripheral clocks in your liver, your heart, your kidneys, your muscles. But all of these peripheral clocks are coordinated and synchronized by the SCN, the master pacemaker. The SCN itself is located directly above where your optic nerves cross, called the optic chiasm, and this location is no accident. The SCN receives direct input from your eyes through a pathway called the retinohypothalamic tract. Specialized cells in your retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells detect light levels and send this information straight to the SCN. This is how your internal clock stays synchronized with the external world, how it knows whether it's day or night. Light is the most powerful Zeitgeber, a German word meaning time giver, the external cue that entrains your circadian rhythm to the 24-hour day. When light hits your eyes in the morning, the SCN responds by suppressing the production of melatonin, a hormone produced by your pineal gland that promotes sleep. Melatonin levels drop, you feel more alert, and your circadian rhythm shifts toward wakefulness. As evening approaches and light levels fall, the SCN allows melatonin production to increase, levels rise, you begin to feel sleepy, and your circadian rhythm shifts towards sleep. This light-mediated entrainment happens continuously. Every morning, bright light resets your circadian clock, pulling it forward or pushing it back to align with the solar day. Without this daily light exposure, your circadian rhythm would free run, following its own internal period, which for most people is actually slightly longer than 24 hours, typically around 24.2 to 24.5 hours. This is why, when people are isolated from external time cues in laboratory settings, they tend to go to bed a little later each day, their sleep schedule gradually drifting later and later. But with normal light exposure, your SCN keeps you synchronized. It's a beautiful system, refined over millions of years of evolution, allowing organisms to anticipate and prepare for the regular cycle of day and night. Let's zoom in even further and look at how this circadian rhythm is generated at the molecular level. Inside each neuron of the SCN, inside each peripheral cell with a clock, there's a transcription-translation feedback loop, a genetic circuit that takes about 24 hours to complete one full cycle. The process begins with two proteins called clock and BML1. These proteins bind together to form a complex that enters the cell's nucleus and activates certain genes, particularly genes called period and cryptochrome. These genes are transcribed into messenger RNA, which leaves the nucleus and is translated into proteins called Per and Cry. As Per and Cry proteins accumulate in the cell's cytoplasm, they eventually form their own complex and re-enter the nucleus. Once inside, they inhibit clock and BMAL1, essentially shutting down their own production. Over time, Per and Cry proteins degrade and their levels fall. When they fall low enough, clock and BMAL1 are released from inhibition and can start the cycle again, activating period and cryptochrome genes, producing new Per and Cry proteins. This whole cycle, from activation to inhibition to degradation and back to activation, takes about 24 hours. It's a molecular clock ticking away in your cells, driven by nothing more than the production and degradation of specific proteins. But here's where it gets really interesting. The speed of this cycle, the precise length of your circadian period, is influenced by how quickly these proteins are modified and degraded. Enzymes add phosphate groups to Per and Cry proteins, and the rate of this phosphorylation determines how stable the proteins are, how long they last before being broken down. Genetic mutations that affect these enzymes can speed up or slow down the molecular clock, giving some people naturally shorter circadian periods and others naturally longer periods. This genetic variation is part of why some people are morning people and others are night people. Your chronotype, your natural preference for being active in the morning or evening, is partly determined by the speed of your molecular clock. People with faster clocks tend to be larks, waking early and feeling alert in the morning. People with slower clocks tend to be owls, staying up late and feeling most alert in the evening. Your circadian rhythm doesn't just control when you sleep and wake. It coordinates an astonishing array of physiological processes, creating daily rhythms in nearly every system of your body. Your body temperature follows a circadian pattern, reaching its lowest point about 2 hours before you naturally wake, and its highest point in the late afternoon. This temperature rhythm is so reliable that scientists can use it to measure the phase of your circadian clock. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormone that helps you respond to challenges, peak in the early morning, preparing you for wakefulness, and drop to their lowest levels at night. Your immune system shows circadian variation, with different types of immune cells peaking at different times of day. Your cardiovascular system shows daily rhythms, with blood pressure and heart rate both following circadian patterns. Even your cell's metabolism is under circadian control. Your liver's ability to process nutrients, your muscles, glucose uptake, your fat cells' insulin sensitivity, all vary depending on the time of day. This is why meal timing can affect weight gain, why eating late at night can disrupt metabolic health, why shift workers who eat during their biological night have increased risk of metabolic disorders. The SCN coordinates all of this through multiple output pathways. It sends signals directly to other parts of the hypothalamus, controlling hormone release. It sends signals through the autonomic nervous system, affecting organs throughout your body. It influences the timing of the sleep-wake cycle itself, though sleep and circadian rhythm, while linked, are actually separate processes controlled by different brain systems. Scientists describe this as the two-process model of sleep regulation. Process C is your circadian rhythm, the signal from your SCN that varies in a 24-hour pattern, promoting wakefulness during your biological day and sleep during your biological night. Process S is sleep homeostasis, the building up of sleep pressure the longer you stay awake. When you first wake up, sleep pressure is low, but it gradually builds throughout the day as a neurochemical called adenosine accumulates in your brain. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine builds up, the sleepier you feel. These two processes interact. During the day, even as sleep pressure builds, your circadian rhythm promotes wakefulness, keeping you alert despite rising adenosine. But in the evening, as your circadian rhythm shifts toward promoting sleep and sleep pressure is high from a full day of wakefulness, the combined effect makes you feel very sleepy. You go to sleep, and during sleep adenosine is cleared, sleep pressure dissipates, and you wake refreshed in the morning when your circadian rhythm shifts back toward promoting wakefulness. Your circadian rhythm is robust, but it can be disrupted. Jet lag is the most obvious example. When you fly across multiple time zones, your internal clock remains synchronized to your home time zone, while the external light-dark cycle is shifted. The result is a mismatch between your circadian rhythm and the local environment. You feel sleepy when the sun is up, alert when you should be sleeping. It takes about 1 day per time zone crossed for your circadian rhythm to fully re-entrain to the new schedule. Shift work creates a chronic version of this disruption. People who work night shifts are trying to sleep during their biological day, when their circadian rhythm is promoting wakefulness, and work during their biological night, when their body wants to sleep. Studies show that shift workers have increased rates of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, gastrointestinal problems, and certain cancers. The disruption to their circadian rhythm has real health consequences. Even modern life with artificial light can disrupt circadian rhythms. Blue light from screens, particularly in the evening, can suppress melatonin production and shift your circadian rhythm later, making it harder to fall asleep at a normal hour. This is why sleep experts recommend avoiding screens for an hour or two before bedtime. Circadian rhythm disorders represent more severe disruptions. Delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, common in teenagers and young adults, is characterized by a circadian rhythm that's shifted later than social norms, making it difficult to fall asleep before 2 or 3 in the morning and nearly impossible to wake for school or work. Advanced sleep-wake phase disorder, more common in older adults, is the opposite, with people becoming sleepy in the early evening and waking at 3 or 4 in the morning. Non-24-hour sleep-wake disorder, most common in blind individuals who lack light input to their SCN, is characterized by a circadian rhythm that free-runs, cycling through all 24 hours over time. People with this disorder might feel normal for a few days, then gradually shift later, eventually trying to sleep during the day and stay awake at night, before cycling all the way around again. Your circadian clock is fundamental to your health. It's not optional, not a luxury, not something you can ignore without consequences. Evolution spent millions of years creating this system, synchronizing your internal biology to the external environment. When you honor your circadian rhythm, when you maintain regular sleep schedules, get light exposure during the day and darkness at night, your body functions optimally. When you disrupt it through irregular schedules, insufficient light exposure, too much artificial light at night, your health suffers. This tiny cluster of neurons in your hypothalamus, This suprachiasmatic nucleus, no bigger than a grain of rice, is conducting a symphony. Every day, every night, coordinating thousands of biological processes, keeping your body in tune with the world. Respect it, work with it, and it will help you sleep better, feel better, live better. Now let's explore what happens during one of the most mysterious aspects of sleep. Close your eyes and imagine you're standing in your childhood home, except the walls are the wrong colour and there's a door that shouldn't exist. You walk through it and find yourself in a tropical rainforest, water dripping from massive leaves overhead. Your mother is there, but she looks different somehow, and she's telling you something urgent about a test you forgot to study for, even though you graduated years ago. A tiger walks past, completely ignoring you. You realise you can fly. You lift off the ground, soaring above the canopy, and then suddenly you're back in your bed. The alarm is going off, and you're trying desperately to hold on to the memory of the dream before it slips away like water through your fingers. Dreams. We spend about 2 hours every night experiencing them, yet they remain one of neuroscience's deepest mysteries. What are dreams? Why do we have them? What do they mean? And what is your brain actually doing when it generates these vivid, often bizarre nighttime narratives? When you dream during REM sleep, which is where most vivid dreaming occurs, specific patterns of brain activity create the dream experience. Neuroimaging studies using PET scans and functional MRI have allowed scientists to see which brain regions are active during REM sleep, and the pattern is fascinating. The limbic system, your brain's emotional centre, becomes highly active during REM sleep. The amygdala, which processes fear and emotional salience, shows intense activation. This explains why dreams often have strong emotional content, why they can be frightening, exciting, or deeply moving. Your emotions in dreams are real emotions, generated by real neural activity in emotional processing centres. The visual cortex also lights up during REM sleep, particularly areas in the back of your brain that process complex visual scenes. This makes sense because dreams are intensely visual. You see things in dreams, often with remarkable clarity and detail. These visual experiences are generated internally, your brain creating imagery without any input from your eyes. The hippocampus, crucial for memory formation, shows activation during REM sleep as well. Dreams often incorporate elements from recent experiences, memories from the previous day or two woven into dream, narratives. Scientists call this the day residue effect, and it suggests that dreaming may be involved in memory processing. But here's what's not active during REM dreaming. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, planning, and critical thinking, shows decreased activity. This explains why dreams can be so bizarre, why impossible things happen, and you just accept them. You're flying? Sure, why not? You're at work, but also in your high school? Makes perfect sense in the dream. Your critical reasoning is offline, so the impossible becomes possible. The illogical becomes logical. The default mode network, a brain network involved in self-referential thinking and internal mental states, shows altered activity during REM sleep. This network is normally active when you're daydreaming or thinking about yourself, and its strange activation pattern during dreams might contribute to the immersive first-person quality of dream experiences. Together, these patterns of activation and deactivation create the distinct phenomenology of dreaming. High emotional activation, but reduced logical reasoning. Vivid visual imagery generated internally. Memory elements mixed and recombined in novel ways. A sense of being immersed in the experience even though it's entirely generated by your brain. Most people associate dreaming exclusively with REM sleep, and indeed, when people are awakened from REM sleep, they report dreams about 80 to 90% of the time. These REM dreams tend to be vivid, narrative, hallucinogenic, bizarre, and emotionally intense. They're the dreams we remember, the dreams we tell our friends about over breakfast. But dreaming also occurs during NREM sleep, just differently. When people are awakened from NREM sleep, particularly from stage 2, They report mental activity about 50 to 60% of the time. But these NREM dreams are different. They tend to be more thought-like, more conceptual, less visual and hallucinogenic. People might report thinking about a problem from work, or having vague impressions of situations or people, rather than experiencing full narrative dreams. Deep sleep stage 3 dreams are even less common and even more fragmentary, often just fleeting images or brief sensations. The deeper sleep is the least associated with dreaming, possibly because the slow, synchronized delta waves of deep sleep don't support the kind of complex cortical activity needed for elaborate mental experiences. As the night progresses and you spend more time in REM sleep with each cycle, your dreams tend to get longer, more elaborate, more bizarre. Your final REM period, occurring in the last third of your sleep, is when you're most likely to experience those truly memorable, emotionally vivid dreams. Dreams can also occur during the transition between sleep and wakefulness. Hypnagogic hallucinations occur as you're falling asleep, often taking the form of vivid sensory experiences, hearing someone call your name, seeing geometric patterns, feeling like you're falling. Hypnopompic hallucinations occur as you're waking up, the dream state briefly bleeding into wakefulness. Both are completely normal and result from your brain being partially in sleep mode and partially in wake mode simultaneously. This is the big question, the one humans have been asking for thousands of years. Why does the brain generate these strange nighttime experiences? What purpose do dreams serve? There are many theories, and the truth is that scientists still don't have a definitive answer. But recent research has shed light on several potential functions of dreaming. The memory consolidation theory suggests that dreams reflect the brain's process of sorting through memories from the day, deciding which to keep and which to discard, integrating new experiences with existing knowledge. Studies have shown that when people learn new information before sleep, they often dream about that information, and those who dream about it show better memory retention later. In one study, people learning to navigate a virtual maze dreamed about the maze, and those who dreamed about it showed the greatest improvement in performance. During REM sleep, your hippocampus, which temporarily stores new memories, communicates with your cortex, transferring selected memories for long-term storage. This memory consolidation process may generate dream experiences as a side effect, memories being replayed and reorganized, manifesting as dream narratives. The emotional regulation theory proposes that REM sleep and dreaming help process emotional experiences, particularly negative or traumatic ones. During REM sleep, while your brain is processing emotional memories, stress hormone levels are suppressed. This creates a unique neurochemical environment where emotional memories can be activated and processed without the full stress response, allowing you to integrate difficult experiences. Studies show that people who are deprived of REM sleep have more difficulty regulating emotions the next day, becoming more reactive to negative stimuli. REM sleep appears to take the emotional edge off difficult experiences, and dreaming might be the experiential manifestation of this emotion processing. The threat simulation theory suggests that dreams serve an evolutionary function by simulating threatening scenarios, allowing you to practice responses in a safe environment. Indeed, dreams frequently involve threatening situations, being chased, falling, being attacked, losing something important. By rehearsing responses to threats during dreams, perhaps we become better prepared to handle real threats when awake. Some researchers argue this function may have been more important in our evolutionary past when physical threats were more common. The creativity and problem-solving theory proposes that the bizarre, associative nature of dreams, with reduced logical constraints, allows for novel combinations of ideas that can lead to creative insights. There are famous examples of scientific discoveries allegedly occurring in dreams. The chemist Auguste Kekule supposedly discovered the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake biting its own tail. The sewing machine was allegedly inspired by a dream. Whether these specific anecdotes are true or embellished, research does show that REM sleep enhances creative problem-solving and the ability to make novel connections between distantly related concepts. The random activation theory, proposed by researchers Alan Hobson and Robert McCarley, suggests that dreams are essentially meaningless, simply the brain's attempt to make sense of random neural firing during REM sleep. The pons, a structure in your brainstem, generates random signals that activate different parts of the cortex, and your brain, doing what it does best, tries to create a coherent narrative from this random input. In this view, dreams don't have deep meaning, they're just the noise of sleep. Most researchers today think dreaming likely serves multiple functions: memory consolidation, emotional processing, maybe threat simulation or creative problem solving, all potentially happening simultaneously. Dreams may not have a single purpose, but rather emerge from multiple brain processes occurring during sleep. What do people actually dream about? Researchers who collect and analyse dream reports have found some interesting patterns. Most dreams are set in familiar locations: your home, your workplace, places from your past. Most dreams include people you know, family members, friends, colleagues. Strangers appear in dreams too, but familiar people are more common. Dreams often have a narrative structure with a beginning, middle, and end, though the plot can be highly fragmented and illogical. You might start in one location, jump to another, with no explanation for the transition. Time can flow strangely in dreams. You might experience what feels like hours passing in a dream that actually lasted only minutes. Emotions in dreams are often negative. Studies show that fear, anxiety, and anger appear in dreams more frequently than positive emotions, possibly reflecting the brain's focus on processing threats and difficult experiences. But pleasant emotions occur too: joy, excitement, love. Bizarreness is a hallmark of dreams. Impossible things happen. People transform into other people. You can breathe underwater, fly through the air, walk through walls. Physical laws don't apply. This bizarreness results from the reduced activity in your prefrontal cortex, the brain region that normally checks whether things make sense. Recurring dreams are common. Many people experience the same dream themes repeatedly: being chased, falling, showing up to school unprepared for a test, losing teeth. These recurring themes may reflect ongoing concerns or unresolved psychological issues, though their specific meaning varies from person to person. Lucid dreams, where you become aware you're dreaming while still in the dream, occur occasionally for most people and frequently for some. During lucid dreams, prefrontal cortex activity increases slightly, giving you enough meta-awareness to recognize the dream state while still maintaining it. Some people practice techniques to induce lucid dreams intentionally, using them for creative exploration or psychological processing. Nightmares, intensely frightening dreams that often wake you up, occur more frequently in childhood, but continue occasionally throughout life. Frequent nightmares can be associated with stress, trauma, certain medications, or sleep disorders. REM sleep behavior disorder, where the normal paralysis of REM sleep is lost, can lead to people physically acting out violent nightmares, which can be dangerous. Despite all we've learned about the neuroscience of dreaming, about which brain regions are active, about potential functions, about dream content patterns, dreams remain fundamentally mysterious. There's something ineffable about the subjective experience of dreaming, the feeling of being somewhere else, the strange logic that makes sense only in the moment. We spend about 6 years of our lives dreaming, 2 hours every night in these vivid, bizarre, emotional experiences. Your brain is doing important work during these dreams, processing memories, regulating emotions, making novel connections. But beyond the neuroscience, beyond the evolutionary functions, there's something profound about dreams, about the brain's ability to create entire worlds, entire experiences from nothing but its own activity. So tonight, when you dream, know that you're experiencing one of the most fascinating phenomena in all of neuroscience. Your brain is active, working, processing, creating. And in the morning, when you wake with only fragments of memory about where you've been, maybe that's okay. Maybe dreams aren't meant to be fully remembered. Maybe they're meant to do their work in darkness, in that mysterious realm between waking and sleeping, reshaping your brain while you sleep. Let's talk about what else your sleeping brain is doing while you rest. Every day, you encounter thousands of pieces of information, faces you see, conversations you have, tasks you perform, facts you read, experiences you live through. Your brain encodes all of this, creating temporary neural representations, memories in the making. But encoding is just the first step. For these experiences to become lasting memories, to be available for recall days, weeks, or years later, they need to be consolidated, strengthened, integrated into your existing knowledge. Sleep is essential for this process. While you sleep, your brain replays memories, strengthens the connections between neurons that store them, and transfers information from temporary storage to permanent archives. Sleep isn't just passive rest. Sleep is active memory work. Let's start with declarative memory, your memory for facts and events. You learn someone's name at a party, you study for an exam, you hear an interesting fact in a podcast. All of this information is initially encoded in your hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain that acts as a temporary memory hub. But the hippocampus has a limited capacity. It can't store everything forever. So during sleep, particularly during slow-wave deep sleep, your hippocampus communicates with your neocortex, the outer layer of your brain, transferring selected memories for long-term storage. This transfer process involves memory replay. During sleep, neurons in your hippocampus fire in the same patterns they fired when you were originally encoding the memory. If you learned a route through a maze during the day, neurons that represented that route fire again during sleep, in the same sequence, at an accelerated speed. It's as if your brain is practicing, rehearsing the memory, strengthening it. This replay doesn't happen randomly. It occurs during specific events in your sleep, particularly during brief bursts of activity called sharp wave ripples. These are high-frequency oscillations that appear in your hippocampus during slow-wave sleep, lasting only 50 to 100 milliseconds, but containing compressed replays of hours of waking experience. During a sharp wave ripple, your brain can replay an entire sequence of events in a fraction of a second. Simultaneously, your neocortex produces sleep spindles, those bursts of rapid brainwaves we discussed earlier. Research suggests that sleep spindles and sharp wave ripples are coordinated, working together to transfer memories from hippocampus to cortex. The hippocampus sends out the replay signal during sharp wave ripples, and the cortex receives and integrates this information during sleep spindles. Studies in animals have directly demonstrated this process. Researchers can record from neurons in the hippocampus and cortex simultaneously during sleep, and show that patterns active during learning are reactivated during sleep. In one famous study, researchers trained rats to run through a maze, recorded which neurons fired as the rats navigated, then recorded the same neurons while the rats slept. During sleep, those navigation neurons fired again in the same sequence, replaying the maze route over and over. In humans, researchers can't record individual neurons, but they can use brain imaging to show that regions active during learning are reactivated during sleep. People who learned a spatial navigation task showed reactivation of the hippocampus during subsequent sleep, and the amount of reactivation predicted how much their performance improved. Researchers have even tried cueing specific memories during sleep. In one study, people learned the locations of objects on a computer screen, with each object paired with a specific sound. During sleep, researchers played some of the sounds softly, not loud, enough to wake people but enough to be detected by their sleeping brain. The memories associated with the cued sounds showed better retention than memories that weren't cued, suggesting that the sounds triggered replay and reconsolidation of those specific memories. different types of memories appear to be consolidated during different sleep stages, suggesting that the full sleep cycle, with its alternation between NREM and REM sleep, is necessary for complete memory processing. Declarative memory, your memory for facts and events, benefits primarily from slow-wave sleep. The deep sleep stage 3 that dominates the first part of the night is when your hippocampus transfers factual information to your cortex for long-term storage. Studies show that people who get more slow-wave sleep after learning show better retention of declarative information. Procedural memory, your memory for skills and how to do things, benefits from different sleep stages depending on the type of skill. Motor skills, learning a new dance move or how to type faster, appear to benefit from both slow-wave sleep and stage 2 NREM sleep. Your brain consolidates the sequence of movements, making them more automatic, more fluent. Perceptual skills, learning to distinguish subtle differences or recognize patterns, benefit particularly from REM sleep. Studies of people learning visual discrimination tasks show that improvement occurs specifically after periods rich in REM sleep, suggesting that REM sleep refines perceptual learning. Emotional memories show a particularly interesting relationship with REM sleep. During REM sleep, while your amygdala is active and processing emotional content, stress hormones like norepinephrine are suppressed. This creates a unique situation where emotional memories can be activated and processed without the full physiological stress response. Research suggests that this allows the emotional intensity of memories to be reduced while the factual content is preserved. After sleep, particularly after REM sleep, people report that emotional events feel less distressing. The memory of what happened remains, but the emotional sting has been taken out. This is why sleep experts often say that time heals, but more accurately, sleep heals. It's the REM sleep periods that help process and integrate emotional experiences. When people are deprived of REM sleep, emotional memories remain more distressing, more intrusive. Studies in people with post-traumatic stress disorder show disrupted REM sleep, and one theory is that PTSD partly results from a failure of REM sleep to properly process and integrate traumatic memories. The flip side of sleep-dependent memory consolidation is what happens when you don't get enough sleep. Sleep deprivation impairs memory at multiple stages. First, sleep deprivation impairs encoding, your ability to form new memories in the first place. When you're sleep deprived, your hippocampus doesn't function properly. Studies using brain imaging show that after sleep deprivation, when people try to encode new memories, their hippocampus shows reduced activation. The result is that memories aren't formed strongly to begin with. Second, sleep deprivation impairs consolidation. Even if you manage to encode memories while sleep deprived, without adequate sleep afterward, those memories won't be properly consolidated. The replay processes that normally occur during sleep can't happen if you're not sleeping. The transfer from hippocampus to cortex doesn't occur efficiently. Research shows that even a single night of sleep deprivation can impair memory consolidation for information learned the previous day. Chronic sleep restriction, getting insufficient sleep night after night, has cumulative effects on memory that build over time. Students often try to cram for exams by staying up late or pulling all-nighters, but this is counterproductive. Studies show that students who sacrifice sleep to study actually perform worse on exams than students who study less but get adequate sleep. The sleep you get after learning is crucial for consolidating what you studied. Sleep doesn't just store memories, it transforms them. During sleep, memories are integrated with existing knowledge, reorganized, and sometimes even qualitatively changed. One example is insight. Sometimes we go to sleep struggling with a problem and wake up with the solution. Research shows this isn't just folk wisdom. Sleep, particularly REM sleep, enhances insight and creative problem solving. In one classic study, people were given a number task that could be solved either through laborious calculation or by discovering a hidden rule that made the problem trivial. People who slept after initial training were 3 times more likely to discover the hidden rule than people who stayed awake, suggesting that sleep allowed their brains to extract the underlying pattern. Sleep also helps with memory integration, connecting new information with things you already know. Researchers have shown that sleep strengthens connections between related memories, creating networks of associated information. This is why sometimes you'll wake up with a connection you didn't see before, a realization about how two things relate, because your sleeping brain was actively integrating information. There's even evidence that sleep promotes memory abstraction, extracting general principles from specific examples. If you learn a bunch of specific instances during the day, sleep can help you extract the underlying rule or category, moving from concrete examples to abstract understanding. The memory work of sleep is selective. Not everything gets equally consolidated. Memories that are more important, more emotional, or more relevant to future goals are preferentially strengthened during sleep. Your brain triages, deciding what's worth keeping and what can be forgotten. Researchers have shown that if you tell people before learning that information will be tested later, or that it's important for future rewards, those memories show enhanced consolidation during sleep. Your brain listens to what you think is important and allocates sleep-dependent consolidation accordingly. Sleep and memory are intimately linked. The memories you form during the day are fragile, vulnerable to interference and forgetting. Sleep stabilizes them, strengthens them, integrates them into your existing knowledge networks. Different sleep stages contribute different aspects of memory processing, which is why you need the full architecture of sleep, both NREM and REM, both early night deep sleep and late night REM sleep. When you shortchange sleep, you shortchange memory. Students who pull all-nighters don't learn as well. Workers who chronically sacrifice sleep for long hours see their cognitive performance decline. Older adults with disrupted sleep show accelerated memory decline. Your brain needs sleep to learn, to remember, to understand. The 8 hours you spend sleeping aren't wasted time. They're productive time, essential time, when your brain is doing some of its most important work. Every memory you cherish, every skill you've mastered, every insight you've gained, they all benefited from sleep, from those nightly hours of memory consolidation and integration that happen completely outside your awareness. So tonight, when you go to sleep, your brain will get to work. It will replay your day, strengthen what matters, integrate new experiences with old knowledge, and prepare you for tomorrow. Trust the process. Give your brain the time it needs. Sleep well, and you'll remember better, learn better, think better. But what happens when sleep doesn't work properly? For most people, most of the time, sleep just works. You get tired in the evening, go to bed, fall asleep within 15 or 20 minutes, sleep through the night with perhaps a brief awakening or two, and wake feeling refreshed after 7 to 9 hours. Sleep is automatic, natural, effortless. But for millions of people, sleep doesn't work properly. Falling asleep takes hours. Staying asleep is impossible. Breathing stops repeatedly throughout the night. Legs twitch uncontrollably. Sudden, overwhelming sleepiness strikes during the day. Sleep, which should be restorative, becomes a source of frustration, exhaustion, and health problems. Sleep disorders are remarkably common. Surveys suggest that about 1/3 of adults experience symptoms of insomnia, the most common sleep disorder. Millions more suffer from sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, narcolepsy, and other conditions that disrupt normal sleep. Let's explore some of these disorders, understanding what goes wrong and why. Insomnia is difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or both, with daytime consequences like fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and mood problems. Acute insomnia, lasting a few days to a few weeks, is extremely common, often triggered by stress, travel, illness, or other temporary disruptions. But chronic insomnia, occurring at least 3 nights per week for 3 months or more, affects about 6 to 10% of adults. What causes chronic insomnia? Often it begins with a period of acute insomnia triggered by some stressor. But then, even after the original trigger is gone, the insomnia persists. This happens through a process called conditioning. You begin to associate your bed with frustration and wakefulness rather than sleep. You develop anxiety about sleep itself, worrying about whether you'll be able to sleep, which makes it even harder to sleep. Your sleep patterns become irregular as you try to compensate for poor sleep by napping or sleeping late. People with insomnia often show hyperarousal, a state of physiological and cognitive activation that interferes with the transition to sleep. They have higher metabolic rates, higher body temperatures, elevated cortisol levels, and increased brain activity, as if their bodies and minds won't shut down properly. Treatment for chronic insomnia often involves cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically designed for insomnia, called CBTI. This addresses the thoughts and behaviors that perpetuate insomnia. Sleep restriction therapy, paradoxically limiting time in bed to match actual sleep time, helps rebuild sleep drive. Stimulus control therapy reassociates the bed with sleep rather than wakefulness. Cognitive therapy addresses anxiety about sleep. Medications can help insomnia short-term but aren't ideal long-term solutions. Sleeping pills can create dependency, lose effectiveness over time, and sometimes impair the quality of sleep even when they increase sleep duration. The most effective long-term approach is behavioral, addressing the underlying patterns that maintain insomnia. Sleep apnea is a disorder where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep. The most common form, obstructive sleep apnea, occurs when throat muscles intermittently relax and block the airway. Each time breathing stops, called an apneic event, oxygen levels drop. The brain detects this and briefly arouses you just enough to restart breathing, often with a loud snore or gasp. People with severe sleep apnea can experience hundreds of these events per night, their sleep constantly fragmented by brief arousals they don't even remember. The result is profound daytime sleepiness, despite spending adequate time in bed. They wake with headaches, their bed partners complain about loud snoring, they fall asleep inappropriately during the day, sometimes even while driving. Sleep apnea affects about 30 million Americans, though many don't know they have it. Risk factors include obesity, older age, male gender, and anatomical features like a thick neck or enlarged tonsils. Untreated sleep apnea has serious health consequences. The repeated drops in oxygen and the constant arousal from sleep activate the sympathetic nervous system, raising blood pressure. People with sleep apnea have increased risks of cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, and cognitive decline. The daytime sleepiness increases accident risk. The primary treatment is continuous positive airway pressure, or CPAP, a machine that delivers pressurized air through a mask, keeping the airway open throughout the night. CPAP is highly effective when used consistently, but compliance can be challenging because wearing the mask is uncomfortable for some people. Other treatments include oral appliances that reposition the jaw, surgery to remove tissue blocking the airway, or lifestyle changes like weight loss. Central sleep apnea, less common than obstructive sleep apnea, occurs when the brain temporarily fails to send signals to breathing muscles. This can be associated with heart failure, stroke, or opioid use. Narcolepsy is a neurological disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness and sudden, uncontrollable sleep attacks. People with narcolepsy can fall asleep without warning, sometimes during conversations, while eating, even while driving. These sleep attacks typically last minutes but can be very disruptive and dangerous. Many people with narcolepsy also experience cataplexy, sudden loss of muscle tone triggered by strong emotions, particularly laughter or surprise. During a cataplectic attack, which can last seconds to minutes, the person remains conscious but their muscles go limp. They might drop objects, slur speech, or collapse completely. Other symptoms can include sleep paralysis, the inability to move or speak when falling asleep or waking up, and hypnagogic hallucinations, vivid dreamlike experiences during sleep-wake transitions. Narcolepsy is caused by loss of neurons in the hypothalamus that produce a neurotransmitter called orexin, also known as hypocretin. Orexin plays a crucial role in regulating wakefulness and sleep. Without sufficient orexin, the boundaries between sleep and wake become unstable. People with narcolepsy can slip into REM sleep almost immediately, which normally takes 90 minutes, and features of REM sleep like paralysis and dreams can intrude into wakefulness. The cause of the orexin neuron loss appears to be autoimmune in most cases, the body's immune system attacking and destroying these specific brain cells. Narcolepsy affects about 1 in 2,000 people, and typically begins in adolescence or early adulthood. Treatment involves medications to promote wakefulness during the day, and sometimes medications to suppress REM sleep and reduce cataplexy. Scheduled naps can help manage daytime sleepiness. Narcolepsy is chronic and lifelong, but with proper treatment, people can manage symptoms and live relatively normal lives. Restless leg syndrome, or RLS, is characterized by an overwhelming urge to move the legs, usually accompanied by uncomfortable sensations described as crawling, tingling, aching, or burning. These sensations worsen when resting, particularly in the evening and at night, and are temporarily relieved by moving. RLS can make falling asleep extremely difficult. Just as you're settling down to sleep, the uncomfortable sensations start, forcing you to move your legs, get up and walk around, anything to get relief. Once you do fall asleep, you might experience periodic limb movements, involuntary leg jerks that occur every 20 to 40 seconds, fragmenting your sleep. RLS affects about 5 to 10% of adults. In some cases, it appears to have a genetic component. In other cases, it's associated with iron deficiency. Even when overall iron levels are normal, there can be insufficient iron in the brain regions involved in movement control. Pregnancy, kidney disease, and certain medications can also trigger RLS. Treatment depends on severity. For mild cases, lifestyle changes like regular exercise, avoiding caffeine, and maintaining good sleep hygiene can help. For moderate to severe cases, medications that increase dopamine activity can be effective, or medications like gabapentin that affect nerve transmission. Iron supplementation helps in cases where iron deficiency is contributing. Circadian rhythm disorders, which we touched on earlier, include delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, advanced sleep-wake phase disorder, shift work disorder, and jet lag disorder. These involve misalignment between the person's internal circadian rhythm and their desired or required sleep schedule. Parasomnias are disorders characterized by abnormal behaviors during sleep. Sleepwalking or somnambulism involves getting up and walking around while still asleep, most common in children but occurring in adults too. Sleep terrors involve sudden episodes of intense fear while sleeping, more dramatic than nightmares, with screaming and panic, but usually no memory of the event upon waking. REM sleep behavior disorder, which we mentioned earlier, involves loss of the normal paralysis during REM sleep, leading to people acting out their dreams, sometimes violently. This disorder is more common in older adults and can be an early sign of neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. Sleep-related eating disorder involves eating during partial arousal from sleep, often with no memory of the episodes. Exploding head syndrome involves hearing a loud noise like an explosion as you're falling asleep or waking up, startling but harmless. Sleep disorders are real medical conditions, not character flaws or something to just power through. If you consistently have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or feel excessively tired during the day despite adequate time in bed, you should talk to a healthcare provider. Many sleep disorders can be diagnosed through a sleep study or polysomnography, where you spend a night in a sleep lab with sensors monitoring your brain waves, eye movements, muscle activity, heart rhythm, and breathing. This allows doctors to see exactly what's happening during your sleep and identify specific problems. Home sleep tests are also available for some conditions like sleep apnea, using portable equipment you take home. and some disorders can be diagnosed based on symptoms and medical history alone. Treatment varies widely depending on the specific disorder, but can be highly effective. Sleep apnea responds well to CPAP. Insomnia improves with cognitive behavioral therapy. Narcolepsy can be managed with medications. RLS symptoms can be reduced with appropriate treatment. Sleep disorders don't just affect sleep. They affect daytime functioning, mood, health, relationships, and quality of life. Getting treatment can be transformative, turning frustrating, exhausting nights into restorative sleep and tired, struggling days into alert, productive ones. Your sleep matters. When it's not working, seek help. You deserve good sleep. Everyone does. And when you don't get it, the consequences can be severe. What happens when you don't sleep enough? Not just one night, but chronically, night after night, accumulating sleep debt that never gets fully repaid. The consequences are far more severe than just feeling tired. Sleep deprivation affects virtually every system in your body and every aspect of your cognitive function. Let's explore what the scientific research shows about the price we pay when we shortchange sleep. The most immediate and obvious effect of sleep deprivation is cognitive impairment. Your brain doesn't work properly without adequate sleep. Attention suffers first. When you're sleep deprived, you have difficulty maintaining focus, your mind wanders, you're easily distracted. Simple tasks that require sustained attention become challenging. Vigilance tasks, where you need to monitor for specific signals over time, show dramatic impairment with sleep loss. In one classic study called the psychomotor vigilance test, people simply press a button when a stimulus appears on a screen. Well-rested people perform this simple task nearly perfectly. Sleep-deprived people show increasing lapses, moments where they fail to respond, their attention dropping out for a second or two. These lapses are dangerous. If you're driving and experience a brief lapse in attention, by the time your awareness returns, you've travelled hundreds of feet without paying attention to the road. Drowsy driving is a major cause of accidents. Studies suggest that driving after 20 hours of wakefulness impairs performance as much as a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08%, the legal limit for intoxication in many places. Working memory, your ability to hold information in mind and manipulate it, deteriorates with sleep loss. Simple math becomes harder. Following complex instructions becomes difficult. Multitasking becomes nearly impossible. Decision-making and judgment suffer. Sleep-deprived people show increased risk-taking, reduced ability to assess situations accurately, and difficulty inhibiting inappropriate responses. They make more errors and take longer to correct those errors when they notice them. Creativity and problem-solving decline. The ability to think flexibly, to see things from different perspectives, to make novel connections between ideas, all depend on well-rested brains. Sleep deprivation makes thinking more rigid, more perseverative, more stuck in established patterns. Language skills can be affected. Finding the right words becomes harder. Verbal fluency decreases. Some studies show impaired comprehension of complex sentences after sleep deprivation. Even social cognition suffers. Sleep-deprived people have more difficulty reading facial expressions and recognizing emotions in others, potentially affecting social interactions and relationships. Sleep and emotions are intimately connected. When you don't sleep enough, your emotional brain goes haywire. Studies using functional brain imaging show that after sleep deprivation, the amygdala, your brain's emotional reactivity center, shows 60% greater activation in response to negative stimuli. At the same time, the connection between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex, which normally helps regulate emotional responses, weakens. The result is that you become more emotionally reactive, more irritable, more likely to respond to minor frustrations with anger or distress. Things that wouldn't normally bother you become infuriating. Your emotional regulation is impaired. Sleep deprivation also affects positive emotions. Studies show reduced activation in reward circuits of the brain after sleep loss, which may explain why sleep-deprived people often report feeling less pleasure in activities they normally enjoy. The relationship between sleep and mood is bidirectional. Poor sleep can lead to mood problems, and mood problems can lead to poor sleep. Chronic sleep deprivation is a significant risk factor for depression and anxiety disorders. People with insomnia have a 10-fold increased risk of developing depression compared to people who sleep well. The emotional consequences of sleep deprivation can affect relationships. Sleep-deprived couples report more conflicts, less effective conflict resolution, and reduced relationship satisfaction. One study found that when one partner didn't sleep well, both partners reported more conflict the next day. Beyond cognitive and emotional effects, chronic sleep deprivation has serious consequences for physical health. The list is sobering. Cardiovascular disease. People who chronically sleep less than 6 hours per night have significantly increased risk of hypertension, heart attack, and stroke. Sleep deprivation activates the sympathetic nervous system, raises blood pressure and heart rate, increases inflammation, and promotes atherosclerosis. Metabolic dysfunction. Short sleep duration is associated with increased risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. Sleep deprivation affects hunger hormones, increasing levels of ghrelin, which stimulates appetite, and decreasing levels of leptin, which signals satiety. Sleep-deprived people tend to eat more, particularly high-calorie foods. Sleep loss also impairs glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, even in young, healthy individuals. Immune function. Sleep is crucial for immune health. During sleep, your immune system produces cytokines, proteins that help fight infection and inflammation. Sleep deprivation reduces immune function. Studies show that people who sleep less than 7 hours are nearly 3 times more likely to develop a cold when exposed to rhinovirus compared to people who sleep 8 hours or more. Inflammation. Chronic sleep deprivation increases markers of systemic inflammation, like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. This chronic low-grade inflammation is linked to numerous diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and neurodegenerative disorders. Pain sensitivity. Sleep deprivation increases pain sensitivity and reduces the effectiveness of pain treatments. People with chronic pain conditions often have disturbed sleep, and the sleep disturbance can make their pain worse, creating a vicious cycle. Cancer risk. Some studies suggest that chronic sleep deprivation and shift work that disrupts circadian rhythms may increase cancer risk, particularly breast cancer and colorectal cancer, though the evidence is still being evaluated. Mortality. Large epidemiological studies consistently show that both short sleep duration, less than 6 hours, and very long sleep duration, more than 9 hours, are associated with increased mortality. The relationship isn't fully understood, but it suggests that regularly getting insufficient sleep over years or decades increases the risk of dying from various causes. Recent research has revealed a particularly concerning connection between sleep and brain health in aging. During sleep, your brain's glymphatic system becomes highly active. This is a waste clearance system that uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush metabolic waste products out of brain tissue. One of the waste products cleared during sleep is beta amyloid, a protein that, when it accumulates and forms plaques, is characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. Studies show that even one night of sleep deprivation increases beta amyloid levels in the brain. Chronic sleep deprivation, over months and years, may allow beta amyloid to accumulate to pathological levels. People with sleep disorders, particularly sleep apnea, show increased beta amyloid deposition in their brains. Poor sleep quality in midlife is associated with increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease decades later. Sleep appears to be crucial for maintaining brain health as we age. One night of poor sleep causes temporary impairment that can be recovered with adequate sleep the next night or two. But chronic sleep restriction, getting insufficient sleep night after night, creates cumulative deficits that build over time. In one study, researchers restricted people's sleep to 6 hours per night for 2 weeks. By the end of the 2 weeks, their cognitive performance was equivalent to people who had been completely sleep deprived for 2 days straight. But here's the concerning part. The sleep-restricted people didn't feel as impaired as they actually were. Their subjective sleepiness plateaued after a few days, even though their objective performance continued to decline. This suggests that people who chronically don't get enough sleep adapt to feeling tired and stop noticing their impairment. They think they're fine. They think they've adapted. But objective testing shows their cognition is significantly impaired. This is why so many people insist they function fine on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, when research clearly shows they don't. The sleep debt from chronic restriction doesn't disappear quickly. One study found that after 2 weeks of sleep restriction to 6 hours per night, people needed multiple nights of extended sleep, sleeping 9 or 10 hours, to return to baseline performance. You can't make up a week of sleep debt with 1 or 2 nights of normal sleep. People vary in their sleep needs and in their vulnerability to sleep deprivation. Most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, but the exact amount varies. There's a small percentage of people, probably less than 1% of the population, who have a genetic mutation that allows them to function well on 6 hours of sleep or less. These short sleepers are rare. Most people who think they're short sleepers are actually chronically sleep deprived. People also vary in how quickly they accumulate cognitive deficits from sleep loss, and how well they recover with sleep. Some people are more vulnerable to the effects of sleep deprivation than others, showing greater cognitive impairment with the same amount of sleep loss. Age affects sleep deprivation vulnerability. Teenagers are particularly vulnerable to sleep loss because their circadian rhythms naturally shift later, making early school start times misaligned with their biology. Older adults often have more fragmented sleep and may need to spend more time in bed to get adequate sleep. Sleep deprivation isn't just about feeling tired. The consequences extend to every aspect of functioning, cognitive performance, emotional regulation, physical health, and longevity. Our modern society's tendency to view sleep as optional, something to sacrifice for productivity or entertainment, comes with a steep cost. You cannot adapt to insufficient sleep. You may stop noticing how impaired you are, but the impairment remains. Your brain needs sleep. Your body needs sleep. Chronic sleep deprivation is not sustainable without consequences. If you're regularly sleeping less than 7 hours per night, you're likely experiencing some degree of cognitive and physical impairment, even if you don't realize it. The solution is simple, but often difficult to implement in our busy world. Prioritize sleep. Protect those 8 hours. Give your brain and body the rest they evolved to need. The benefits of adequate sleep are tremendous, and the costs of inadequate sleep are severe. Sleep isn't optional. Sleep is essential. But why? Why did evolution create this system where we need to spend a third of our lives unconscious? Sleep is universal among animals. Fruit flies sleep. Worms sleep. Fish sleep. Birds sleep. Mammals sleep. Even jellyfish, which don't have brains, show behavioral states that meet the criteria for sleep. The universality of sleep across such diverse species tells us something profound. Sleep isn't a recent evolutionary development. Sleep is ancient, fundamental to biology itself. And this presents a puzzle. Why would evolution create a state that requires organisms to spend hours every day unconscious, vulnerable, unable to forage or mate or watch for danger? What is sleep doing that's so important it's worth the enormous risk? Scientists have been asking this question for decades, and while we still don't have a complete answer, research has revealed that sleep serves multiple critical functions. One of the oldest and most intuitive theories is that sleep is for restoration, allowing the body and brain to repair damage accumulated during waking hours. Research supports this idea. During deep sleep, growth hormone is released, promoting tissue repair and muscle development. Protein synthesis increases. Cells undergo maintenance and repair processes. The brain itself undergoes restoration during sleep. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. all that metabolic activity produces waste products that need to be cleared. During sleep, the glymphatic system we mentioned earlier becomes highly active, flushing metabolic waste out of brain tissue. Studies in mice show that the space between brain cells expands by about 60% during sleep, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely and carry away waste products like beta amyloid. This waste clearance appears to be much less efficient during wakefulness, suggesting that one function of sleep is to give the brain time to clean house. The immune system also undergoes restoration during sleep. Cytokine production increases, immune cells become more active. The body is better positioned to fight infections and heal injuries during sleep than during wakefulness. But restoration alone doesn't fully explain sleep. You could potentially achieve restoration through quiet rest without complete unconsciousness. There must be more to sleep than simple recovery. Another theory proposes that sleep evolved as a way to conserve energy during times when being awake and active wouldn't be productive. For many animals, there are periods when environmental conditions make foraging difficult or dangerous. Nocturnal predators sleep during the day when they can't hunt effectively. Diurnal animals sleep at night when they can't see well enough to forage safely. During sleep, metabolic rate decreases, body temperature can drop, and energy expenditure is reduced. For animals living on tight energy budgets, these savings could be significant. Sleep might have evolved as an energy conservation strategy, forcing inactivity during periods when being active wouldn't pay off. But this theory has limitations too. The energy savings from sleep are modest, perhaps only 100 to 200 calories per day in humans. You could achieve similar savings by just resting quietly. And sleep isn't simply an activity. The brain remains highly active during sleep, particularly during REM sleep, so the energy conservation benefit for the brain is minimal. Perhaps the most compelling modern theory is that sleep provides a period of offline processing, allowing the brain to reorganize information, consolidate memories, and perform computations that can't happen during active engagement with the world. We've already discussed how sleep consolidates memories, transferring information from temporary to permanent storage, integrating new experiences with existing knowledge. This memory consolidation might be the primary function of sleep, or at least a major one. During waking, your brain is constantly processing sensory input, responding to the environment, encoding new information. This creates interference. New information can disrupt the consolidation of recently acquired information. By having a dedicated offline period where no new encoding occurs, sleep allows the brain to focus on organizing and strengthening existing memories without interference. The alternation between NREM and REM sleep might serve different aspects of this offline processing. NREM sleep, with its slow oscillations and sharp wave ripples, facilitates replay and transfer of memories from hippocampus to cortex. REM sleep, with its high brain activity and reduced logical constraints, might facilitate integration, reorganization, and the extraction of abstract patterns from specific experiences. Some researchers propose that sleep allows for synaptic homeostasis. During waking, learning strengthens synapses, the connections between neurons. If this continued unchecked, synapses would become saturated, unable to encode new information. Sleep, particularly deep NREM sleep, might allow for synaptic downscaling, selectively weakening less important synaptic connections while preserving important ones, essentially resetting the system for new learning the next day. Most researchers today believe sleep serves multiple functions simultaneously. Sleep restores the body and brain, sleep conserves energy, sleep consolidates memories, sleep processes emotions, sleep clears metabolic waste, sleep supports immune function. Different sleep stages might prioritize different functions. Deep NREM sleep might focus more on physical restoration and waste clearance. REM sleep might focus more on emotional processing and memory, integration. The full sleep cycle, with its alternation between stages, might be necessary to achieve all the functions sleep provides. The exact balance of functions might vary across species. In species with larger brains relative to body size, The memory processing functions of sleep might be more critical. In species with smaller brains, the restorative and energy conservation functions might be more important. Across development, the functions of sleep change. Infants spend much more time in REM sleep than adults, possibly because their rapidly developing brains need extensive synaptic organization and memory processing. Elderly adults get less deep sleep, possibly because their reduced physical activity creates less need for physical restoration. Looking at sleep across the animal kingdom reveals fascinating variations. Dolphins and some other marine mammals show unihemispheric sleep, where one half of the brain sleeps while the other stays awake, allowing them to continue swimming and surface to breathe. Birds can also show unihemispheric sleep, particularly during migration when they need to fly for extended periods. Giraffes sleep very little as 30 minutes per day in short bouts, possibly because their large size and vulnerability to predators makes prolonged sleep dangerous. Elephants sleep about 4 hours per day. Brown bats sleep up to 20 hours per day. Aquatic mammals that need to surface to breathe, like seals and sea lions, show modified sleep patterns when in the water compared to when on land. Some birds can sleep while flying, shutting down one hemisphere at a time. The diversity of sleep patterns across species suggests that while sleep is universal, the specific manifestation of sleep can be modified by ecological pressures. But all animals need some form of sleep, suggesting that whatever sleep does, it's fundamental enough that evolution has preserved it across hundreds of millions of years despite the vulnerability it creates. Despite decades of research, we still don't fully understand why sleep exists. We know sleep serves multiple important functions. We know sleep deprivation has severe consequences. We know sleep is universal and ancient, but we don't have a single, comprehensive theory that explains all aspects of sleep. Perhaps that's because sleep doesn't have a single purpose. Perhaps sleep evolved to serve one function initially, maybe energy conservation, and then other functions like memory consolidation were added over evolutionary time, creating the complex, multifaceted process we see today. Or perhaps there's still a fundamental function of sleep we haven't discovered yet, some critical process that occurs only during sleep that we haven't identified. What we do know is this: sleep is not an epiphenomenon, not a useless vestige, not something we can ignore without cost. Sleep is fundamental to biology. Your brain evolved to need sleep. Your body requires it. The hours you spend sleeping are not wasted. They are essential, productive, beneficial. And throughout your life, your sleep changes. The way you sleep now is not how you slept as a baby, and it's not how you'll sleep when you're elderly. Sleep changes dramatically across the lifespan, from infancy through childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and into old age. Let's walk through these changes, understanding how sleep evolves with us. Newborns sleep a lot, 16 to 18 hours per day, but not all at once. Their sleep is polyphasic, distributed across multiple periods throughout the day and night. They don't distinguish between day and night. They sleep when they're tired, wake when they're hungry, with no regard for whether it's 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning, which is why new parents are so exhausted. Newborn sleep architecture is different from adult sleep. Newborns have 2 types of sleep instead of the 5 stages adults experience. Active sleep, which resembles REM sleep, and quiet sleep, which resembles NREM sleep. They spend about 50% of their sleep time in active sleep, compared to 20 to 25% in REM sleep for adults. Newborns enter sleep through active sleep, not through NREM sleep like adults and older children. This might be because their brains are doing intensive developmental work that requires the high brain activity characteristic of REM sleep. Around 2 to 3 months, dramatic changes occur. The circadian rhythm develops. Babies begin to produce melatonin in a circadian pattern, with levels rising at night and falling during the day. They start to consolidate sleep into longer nighttime periods and shorter, fewer daytime naps. By 6 months, most babies can sleep 6 hours continuously at night. a milestone that brings great relief to exhausted parents. Sleep cycles in infants are shorter than in adults, about 50 minutes compared to 90 minutes, meaning they cycle through sleep stages more quickly. As they grow, sleep cycles gradually lengthen, approaching adult duration by late childhood. Infant sleep serves crucial developmental functions. The brain is growing rapidly, forming billions of neural connections. REM sleep appears particularly important for brain development, possibly contributing to the high proportion of REM sleep in infancy. Sleep disturbances in early development can have lasting effects on brain maturation and behaviour. As children grow from infancy through early childhood, several sleep changes occur. Total sleep time gradually decreases. 1-year-olds need about 14 to 15 hours of sleep per day. By age 5, this drops to 10 to 14 hours. The number of daytime naps decreases, with most children transitioning to a single afternoon nap by 18 months and giving up naps entirely by age 5 or 6. Nighttime sleep becomes more consolidated. Sleep cycles lengthen. The proportion of REM sleep decreases, while the proportion of deep NREM sleep increases. Children spend more time in stage 3 deep sleep than adults do, possibly because deep sleep supports the physical growth that occurs during childhood. Sleep problems are common in childhood. Many young children resist bedtime, a behaviour that can become a nightly battle. Night wakings are common, with children waking and calling for parents. Nightmares become more frequent as children's cognitive abilities develop, and they can imagine frightening scenarios. Parasomnias like sleepwalking and sleep terrors peak in early to middle childhood. These typically occur during slow-wave sleep in the first third of the night. They're usually harmless, and most children outgrow them, though they can be frightening for parents to witness. Adequate sleep in childhood is crucial for cognitive development, learning, emotional regulation, and physical health. Children who don't get enough sleep show difficulties with attention, behaviour problems, emotional dysregulation, and reduced academic performance. Adolescence brings dramatic changes in sleep patterns, driven by biological, social, and environmental factors. Around puberty, a shift in circadian timing occurs. Teenagers' biological clocks naturally shift later, a phenomenon called sleep phase delay. Their brains start producing melatonin later in the evening, making them feel sleepy later. They also take longer to build up sleep pressure during the day. The result is that teenagers naturally want to stay up late and sleep in late. This isn't laziness or rebellion, this is biology. A teenager's circadian rhythm is genuinely shifted later, relative to a child's or adult's rhythm. But societal demands often conflict with this biology. Early school start times force teenagers to wake up when their bodies are still in deep sleep, still producing melatonin. This creates chronic sleep deprivation. Surveys show that most teenagers get significantly less than the 8 to 10 hours of sleep recommended for their age group, often sleeping only 6 to 7 hours on school nights. This sleep deprivation has consequences. Teenagers show impaired academic performance, increased risk of accidents, particularly car accidents, mood problems including increased rates of depression, and increased risk-taking behaviour. Some researchers advocate for later school start times to align with adolescent biology, and studies show that when schools delay start times, students get more sleep and show improvements in attendance, academic performance, and mood. REM sleep remains important in adolescence, accounting for about 20 to 25% of sleep time. Deep NREM sleep begins to decrease, starting a decline that continues throughout adulthood. Adolescent sleep is also affected by social and environmental factors. Increased academic demands, extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, and social activities all compete for time. Screen time, particularly late-night use of phones and computers, suppresses melatonin and delays sleep. Many teenagers drink caffeine to cope with daytime sleepiness, which can further interfere with nighttime sleep. The combination of biological sleep phase delay, early school start times, and social pressures creates a perfect storm of sleep deprivation in adolescence, a critical period of brain development when adequate sleep is especially important. Young adulthood through middle age is often considered the period of most stable sleep, though many adults still don't get adequate sleep due to work demands, family responsibilities, and lifestyle choices. Sleep architecture in adulthood shows the standard pattern we've discussed, 4 to 6 cycles per night, each cycling through NREM stages and REM sleep. Adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, though individual variation exists within this range. Deep sleep begins to decline in adulthood, with the amount of stage 3 NREM sleep decreasing gradually from young adulthood through middle age. This decline is accompanied by decreased amplitude of slow waves, suggesting that even the deep sleep that occurs is not as deep as it was in youth. Sleep quality can be affected by the demands of adult life. Work stress, shift work, caring for young children, financial worries, and health problems can all disrupt sleep. Insomnia rates are higher in adulthood than in adolescence, affecting about 1/3 of adults at some point. Pregnancy affects sleep, particularly in the 3rd trimester, when physical discomfort, frequent urination, and hormonal changes disrupt sleep. After childbirth, caring for a newborn creates severe sleep disruption for parents, particularly mothers. Menopause in women brings sleep disruptions due to hot flashes, night sweats, and hormonal changes. The prevalence of sleep problems increases significantly around menopause. Despite these challenges, adults who prioritize sleep and maintain good sleep hygiene can generally achieve healthy, restorative sleep throughout adulthood. The key is recognizing that sleep is not optional and making it a priority. Aging brings significant changes to sleep architecture and quality. Older adults typically go to bed earlier and wake earlier, partly due to advancement of their circadian phase. The internal clock shifts earlier with age, the opposite of what happens in adolescence. Sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented. Deep sleep stage 3 continues to decline, with some elderly adults getting very little deep sleep at all. Slow wave activity decreases. The threshold for arousal from sleep lowers, meaning older adults are more easily awakened by noise or other disturbances. Sleep efficiency, the percentage of time in bed actually spent asleep, decreases. Older adults spend more time awake after initially falling asleep, wake more frequently during the night, and may wake earlier than desired in the morning. It might take an older adult 8 or 9 hours in bed to get 7 hours of actual sleep. The causes of these changes are multifaceted. The suprachiasmatic nucleus shows reduced neuronal density and decreased amplitude of circadian rhythms with age. Melatonin production decreases. Physical health problems become more common, and many are associated with sleep disruption. Pain, nocturia requiring frequent nighttime urination, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, all more common in older adults, can fragment sleep. Medications commonly taken by elderly adults can affect sleep. Some medications cause daytime sleepiness, leading to excessive napping that interferes with nighttime sleep. Others can cause insomnia or disrupt sleep architecture. Social and behavioral factors also play roles. Retirement can reduce time constraints and physical activity, both of which help maintain good sleep. Reduced exposure to bright light, particularly for older adults who spend more time indoors, can weaken circadian rhythms. Despite these changes, older adults still need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. The myth that older people need less sleep is false. They may get less sleep due to difficulty sleeping, but they still need adequate sleep for health and cognition. Poor sleep in older adults is associated with increased risk of cognitive decline, dementia, falls, cardiovascular problems, and mortality. Addressing sleep problems in elderly adults through better sleep hygiene, treatment of underlying medical conditions, judicious use of medications, and sometimes bright light therapy to strengthen circadian rhythms can significantly improve quality of life. Sleep changes across the lifespan, from the polyphasic sleep of infancy to the lighter, more fragmented sleep of old age. Each stage of life has its characteristic sleep patterns and challenges, but regardless of age, sleep remains essential. Infants need sleep for brain development. Children need sleep for growth and learning, Teenagers need sleep for the massive brain reorganization that occurs during adolescence. Adults need sleep for health, memory, and functioning. Elderly adults need sleep to maintain cognitive abilities and physical health. Our society often doesn't respect these developmental needs. We keep babies up to fit adult schedules. We force teenagers to wake too early. We glorify adult sleep deprivation as productivity. We dismiss sleep problems in elderly adults as normal aging. Understanding how sleep changes across the lifespan should help us better support good sleep at every age. Parents of infants need support and understanding. School schedules should align with teenage biology. Workplaces should respect adults' sleep needs. Healthcare for elderly adults should prioritize sleep health. Sleep is not the same throughout life, but it's important throughout life. From your first day to your last, your brain needs sleep. Honor that need. At every age, sleep matters. We've journeyed through the fascinating science of sleep and dreams tonight. We've explored the architecture of sleep, the stages that cycle through the night, from light N1 sleep through deep, slow-wave sleep to vivid REM dreaming. We've seen how a tiny cluster of neurons in your hypothalamus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, generates the circadian rhythm that coordinates your biology with the day-night cycle. We've discovered what happens in your brain when you dream, how the limbic system activates while the prefrontal cortex quiets, creating those bizarre emotional nighttime narratives. We've learned how sleep consolidates memories, replaying experiences, transferring information from temporary to permanent storage, integrating new knowledge with old. We've explored what goes wrong in sleep disorders, from the difficulty falling asleep in insomnia to the dangerous pauses in breathing during sleep apnea, from the sudden sleep attacks of narcolepsy to the uncomfortable sensations of restless leg syndrome. We've seen the severe price paid for sleep deprivation, cognitive impairment, emotional dysregulation, physical health problems, and increased mortality. We've contemplated why sleep evolved, why nearly every animal spends hours each day in this vulnerable state, because sleep serves critical functions that cannot be achieved during wakefulness. Restoration, memory consolidation, emotional processing, waste clearance, functions so important that evolution preserved sleep across hundreds of millions of years, and we've watched how sleep changes across your life, from the round-the-clock sleep of infancy to the later shifted sleep of adolescence, from the stable sleep of adulthood to the lighter, more fragmented sleep of old age. Different at every stage, but essential at every stage. The science of sleep has revealed something remarkable. Those 8 hours you spend sleeping each night are not wasted time. They are not downtime. They are essential time. While you sleep, your brain is working, consolidating memories, processing emotions, clearing waste, reorganizing information. While you sleep, your body is working, repairing tissues, strengthening your immune system, regulating hormones. Sleep is not a luxury. Sleep is not optional. Sleep is a biological necessity, as important as food or water. You cannot cheat sleep without paying a price. You cannot adapt to insufficient sleep, though you may stop noticing how impaired you are. You cannot make up for chronic sleep debt with weekend catch-up sleep. Our modern society has created an epidemic of sleep deprivation. We wear exhaustion as a badge of honor. We sacrifice sleep for productivity, entertainment, or social obligations. We flood our evenings with artificial light that disrupts our circadian rhythms. We drink caffeine to power through daytime sleepiness. We fill our late nights with screens that suppress melatonin. And we pay for it, with impaired cognition, with emotional instability, with increased disease risk, with shortened lifespans, with reduced quality of life. But the solution is simple. Sleep, prioritize it, protect it, give your brain and body the 7 to 9 hours they evolved to need. Maintain a regular sleep schedule, going to bed and waking at consistent times. Get bright light exposure during the day and darkness at night. Keep your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. Avoid caffeine in the afternoon and evening. Limit screen time before bed. Create a relaxing bedtime routine. treat sleep as important as diet or exercise, because it is. Maybe more so. You can survive weeks without food. You can survive days without water. But you cannot survive without sleep. Tonight, when you close your eyes and drift off, your brain will begin its nightly work, cycling through stages, replaying memories, processing emotions, clearing waste, restoring and reorganizing, preparing you for tomorrow. Trust the process. Evolution spent millions of years perfecting this system. Your brain knows what it needs. Your body knows what it requires. Give yourself the gift of sleep, not just tonight, but every night. Your health, your cognition, your emotions, your very life depend on it. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the science of sleep and dreams. If you found this helpful, if it gave you a new appreciation for those nightly hours of rest, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into science, delivered in this relaxing format. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to explore next. Now close your eyes, let your body relax, feel yourself drifting. Your brain is ready to sleep, ready to cycle through those stages we discussed, ready to do its essential work. Sleep well, dream deeply, and wake tomorrow refreshed, restored, and ready. Good night.